Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to Draft Day Sports College Basketball 2022. It's episode number 4. So, last time out, we just finished our first contact period. And we finished it in style by getting our very first recruit to sign on. Not that it's a very good one in Troy DePina, but it was enough to, at least at the moment, see ourselves ranked just about mid-table in our conference when it came to recruiting comparison. When you look at the rest of the conference, they're in a similar boat as us. It's almost all one-star recruits. You can see here is where we are located right now, 2.4 points. I don't know what that evaluation is all based on, but I would assume it's quality of player. You can see our quality in Troy DePina is better than the quality of the player that North Alabama have signed on. And it's about the equivalent of each of the two players that they have here. And North DC maybe a little bit higher, but there's only 3 2-star recruits total. And from my list, Troy DePina was the lowest on the list by some margin. And you're looking at these guys, even though they have 3 players, they are roughly the equivalent of a Troy DePina. So there hasn't been much that was better than what DePina brings to the table out of the recruits that are out there. He is pretty on par or better than quite a few of the guys that the other schools have recruited. But they've definitely recruited more than we have on average, as we are slightly below the halfway point within the conference. But it's good to know that, A, we're getting somewhere, and B, we're about on par with a lot of the other teams at this stage. But here's our problem going forward. I have 9 players remaining on my call list besides DePina, and we are now in a state of 0 interest from those 9 players. I've gone after 2 of these guys quite heavily, quite extensively, and gotten nowhere with them. So that's a worry. That's a definite worry. Here's what I'm going to do next, though. Taking a look at all regions and interested recruits, you can see that quite a few of them have already signed on with others, including Lee Brown, but there are 4 players remaining out there, and not necessarily good ones, a few C pluses and a C. Sean Ross looks like our top candidate to get after, as he has the GPA necessary, and he is from Oregon. I think this is somebody we absolutely want to take a look at and see what we have. Here is why I wouldn't have been going after him before, as he is not a good defender. But I'm very much going to have to suck it up and take what I can get this year, as, my options are very limited. And then I think we're going to be focusing pretty heavily on just trying to, get what we can get. So recruiting is year-round in this game, but there are 3 very key periods. You have 3 contact periods as you go through the year. That's where you're going to make the most progress. That's where you're going to get the most verbals. Most of the signings that are going to take place are going to be based off of those 3 contact periods. So that first one is behind us. We're now into a quiet period that will end in the early signing period, letter of intent signings. And that just confirms the verbals. The verbals aren't necessarily guarantees. Our second contact period is not going to be until the middle of March. So we have quite a while before that is going to happen. That is late in the season. You have another one again just shortly after that in April, just before the end of the year. So early recruiting, late recruiting. Early recruiting is now behind us. We have quite a while before we get to that late recruiting. So in the meantime, it's going to be practice and getting into the season itself. Season begins November 13th. So we have just over a month till then. In the meantime, I'm going to be practicing and just trying to get after these recruits a little bit. I will let you know when I have success number 2 in terms of conversations. We're still sitting on just the ones. the one time where we got through, and that was Lee Brown, right? We got through and we found out that he cared about location. That's still it up till this point, despite almost 300 conversations, attempted conversations at this stage. I've succeeded once out of about 300. The contact stuff has found tiny bits of success. My assistant coach clearly is a little bit better, even though he and I are both 1 star. Here's the thing about the stars. The thing about the stars is my assistant coaches all have 1 star. But 1 star is complicated. There's a 5-star system, but behind the scenes, it's a 100-point scale. So 5 stars is 100 points. 4.5 stars is 90 points. 4 stars is 80 points. But as that goes down, 1 full star is 20 points. 1.5 stars is where you get to 30 points. 30 out of 100. It takes 30 out of 100 to see 1.5 stars. So through 29 points, you're still showing up as 1 star. It doesn't show up as any less. So it's a complicated scale at the beginning stages. Once you get moving, every 10 points you pick up a half star. But that doesn't happen through those first 29 points, as it defaults to 1 star. That's the minimum. I'm going to be at 1 star for a very long time. It'll be nice to see when something pops up at 1.5 stars to really show that we've made some progress. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Speaking of the players, they do show up at half star. Coaches don't, but the players do. And you can see we have 3 players on this squad that are half star players. Half star. And only 1 of those is a walk-on. 2 of those guys are on scholarship. From there, there's another 4 players that show up as 1-star talents. That's half our roster. Half our roster is 1 star and below. Not just as a recruit, but as a current player. That includes a senior. That includes a couple sophomores and a junior. We then have a couple 1.5 star players, a couple 2-star players, and there's really only 4 players that have much quality at all on this roster. Rodney Wallace, power forward, Curtis Riggs, and Todd Cage, 2 senior point guards, and then Josh McIntyre. 3 of those 4 players are seniors. Our next best player is a senior, another upperclassman there. So this is a team that outside of Rodney Wallace, we're in a world of hurt, especially come next season when we're losing a majority of the talent that this team has. Let's hope that we're going to have access to some transfers coming in. Playing time, transfers are often looking for playing time, and playing time is one thing I'm definitely going to be able to offer. When you look at this roster, beyond Rodney Wallace, there's nothing left come next year. Robert Lawrence, a small forward, a 2-star small forward who may progress a little bit, but again, in terms of development, these guys aren't going to develop much under a very weak coaching staff. So the hopes of this team are definitely in a couple freshmen down the road sticking around, and hoping that Rodney Wallace actually sticks out his time with us and doesn't go into the transfer portal, which is entirely possible. He is absolutely a starter and will be a starter for every year that he's here. Guaranteed. Nobody is near his quality. Nobody has the potential to even match his current quality. So Rodney Wallace is the best player this program is going to have for quite a few years. That being said, he could still up and leave for something more prestigious. Being that the relationships are good, being that he has good work ethic, I hope that we'll be able to retain him, because he is going to be the key to this team for the next 3 years on any wins that we pick up. I don't suspect that we're going to be climbing the ladder anytime soon, especially with this current recruiting model. If I'm only recruiting 1-star guys for the next few years, we're not going to be climbing the ladder. I've got to get to a point where I can have some success with these guys and target better players and break them down and get them to come play for us. Because it's one thing to go after the 1 to 2-star recruits that are willing to sign for you. It's another to find a 4-star recruit and convince them to come play for you. And that is what historically I was really good at with this. We're finding right now that that is just not happening. But even if I'm still really bad at it, if I get to the point where it's not 1 out of 300 successes, if I get to the occasional success, you can do it. You can get a 4-star recruit to come play for you. If you badger them enough in the right way with the occasional success, and you just stick with it, you get after it and get after it and get after it and get after it, you can succeed. But we're not at that minimum standard to be getting the occasional, right? 1 out of 300 is not going to do it. I can pester a guy 300 times, but I can't just pester a guy 300 times and turn that into success. Because right now, that's only enough to go from nothing to cool. He's not going to sign for you at cool. We need even more than that. That's the difficult part. But hopefully we can hang on to Rodney Wallace, because he is the key to this team for the next few years. He is absolutely our best player and will be our best player for some time. And taking a look at my roster, the star rating is just behind me here, so you can't see it as we're looking at literally the last player on the list. But Lane Holcomb, half-star current ability, 2-star potential. He is a freshman center. Looking at the center position, you have Chris Morton, Jose McIntyre. They're both underclassmen. They both have potential compared to their current ability, and none of the centers are good. But the other two are definitely better right now. So I'm going to go ahead and take Lane Holcomb and use the red shirt. For those unfamiliar with the system, what a red shirt does is you lose a year of eligibility, but it makes them unplayable for the entire year. But you don't lose a year of eligibility. You lose this year of eligibility, but you gain it for later. You can only do that to 2 players. So let me rephrase that, because I don't think I worded that very well at all. In fact, I said the exact opposite of what I should say there. Anyway, what you're doing is you're taking the current year and forcing them to sit that year out. College lasts 4 years, but it doesn't have to last 4 years. It can last 6 and beyond. I should know. I did that. I went and got my master's. What you have is 4 years that you could play basketball. If you do it over the course of 4 years, you're only going to develop so much in 4 years. If you take a year and sit on the sidelines, unable to gain any minutes that year, you're stretching that into a 5th year of eligibility, meaning you still only play 4 years, but you stretch it out over 5 years now instead of 4. Now, as long as you don't regress, as long as you are progressing, then that 5th year makes you a better player by the time you actually reach your redshirt senior year. So by redshirting Holcomb, we are adding a year. He'll still be a freshman next year in terms of how they look at it in his eligibility. So I can redshirt 2 players. I've done 1 so far. I think long-term prospects, I want to redshirt players as often as possible. It's going to help us long-term. adding that fifth year to as many players as you can. My options then will depend on what we have positionally. Looking at terms of personnel, we have more small forwards than anywhere else. That would be an easy pick, right? You have extra players there, but looking at what you have the 4 small forwards. We have a senior and a couple juniors. It's the freshmen you want to redshirt. You get in trouble if you start redshirting sophomores. There's a good chance that they're going to enter the transfer portal. But here's the thing about Quentin McIntosh. Quentin McIntosh is a half star out of half star. You want players that have potential, that you're going to help develop through a red shirt. McIntosh is not somebody who's going to develop much, if at all. Therefore, I'm not going to waste a red shirt on a terrible player. He's not going to play anyway. And the extra year is not going to help him develop. You don't necessarily want to do it where you have just 2 players in a position. But here's the thing about shooting guard and the 5 guards that I have. I have 3 seniors and 2 freshmen in guard positions. And those 3 seniors are absolutely among the 3 best players that I have. And the 2 freshmen, while talented, both of them have a decent amount of potential. One or either of these players could potentially be redshirted to help with their development. Now, the higher potential is Gross, but that's also the position that has a greater need. But Cage and Riggs, as 2 of the better players that I have, are probably going to be splitting time, well, obviously at point guard. When one is out, the other one will certainly be our point guard this season, not necessarily Wade Dyer. But Willis, they're both better than Willis. So theoretically, I would want one of them in at shooting guard with both of them on the court. And both of those guys kind of maximizing their time. And Willis being the one who is more the off-the-bench backup to Cage and Riggs. If you get 100% of your point guard time between those 2, and you get 60% of your shooting guard time out of one of those 2, and then Willis gets 40%, that means I could redshirt Brent Gross and help him with his development, and then maybe by next season he'll be a 2-star player and be as good as Willis is now. That's the idea anyway. And that's definitely not a bad way to go. And looking down the roster, I really don't see any other options that are guys you want to red shirt. Robert Lawrence, McIntyre, they're going to play. Wallace obviously is somebody you don't want. Singletary, Ernie Singletary, he's already a sophomore. He does have higher potential, but I think he's got to play. He's got to be the backup to Wallace. And as we struggle at center, Morton is definitely going to play. And I think McIntyre has to be eligible to play. Rodney Wallace, we're going to play him as many minutes as he can handle. Therefore, yeah, this seems like the best option is to either redshirt Wade Dyer or Brent Gross. As Gross has higher potential, I'm going to go ahead and redshirt Brent Gross. But let's see about him a little bit. What do we know? Player profile. He's not too concerned about playing time, so that's good. Average personality, good work ethic. Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to go ahead and redshirt Brent Gross. So as we are definitely getting ready to start games here soon, I think it's time to sort out our lineup, sort out our minutes. For some, it's easy, right? Rodney Wallace is going to get all the time that we can give him. While Joey Jensen might be a senior, He's first off, he's just a walk on anyway, and he's 1 star out of 1 star, and I'm not worried about his development. I am worried about Singletary's though. So Singletary is going to be taking minutes away from Jensen. Jensen's going to be getting garbage time only. So there's the first thing. Let's go ahead and get into the depth chart and change that. In that situation, it's regardless of their current ability. Head to head, there's nothing to it. Where there is something is Chris Morton versus Jose McIntyre. If we want to win now, we do need to think about which one is a better option for us. They are both underclassmen, so they're going to be around for a while, and they both have potential beyond where they're at. However, Morton has significantly better potential than McIntyre, so I would lean towards Morton over McIntyre, but I have a feeling they're definitely going to be splitting time in their position. Morton's a better inside shooter, better at the free throws, better ball handler. They're both really bad on defense. In fact, my entire team is really poor individual defenders. So recruiting poor defenders isn't necessarily going to hurt us, as it looks like there's no quality defenders. So anybody we're recruiting right now is going to at least be as good as those they are replacing. Not that that's a good thing. Morton is much better at drawing fouls. Similar discipline. IQ is just a little bit lower. Athleticism is a little bit lower. But you've got to say that Morton is probably the better player anyway compared to McIntyre, and has much better potential. So we do want to give a majority of the minutes to Morton, but as both are underclassmen and we want both to develop, we do want to share those minutes out a bit. All right, so here is my revamped depth chart, which is literally all over the place from where it was. But Riggs went from 30 minutes up to 34. That's our senior point guard. Our other senior point guard, Cage, has gone from 10 minutes up to 28. Following that system that I was talking about, he has taken over as starter at the shooting guard position. He has all 6 minutes that Riggs does not have at point guard, so he will be playing that reserve point guard. Meanwhile, the young one, Dyer, does have 6 minutes plus garbage time for point guard, so he'll get at least a little bit of time in every night. That's at shooting guard, though. Meanwhile, Willis, who was the starting shooting guard, who was slotted for 30 minutes, is all the way down to 12 now as a 2-star talent with some potential, still plenty of room to develop. 12 is not a terrible number to have. McIntyre's going to get 16, same thing. That's your young center. But the other McIntyre, we have 2 of them on the team, he's getting 26 at small forward, sharing that with Lawrence, 2-star developing talent, who's getting 14. Wallace up to 32. I think I could actually get away with giving him more than that, but I want Singletary to get some development. He's getting 8 a night. But the big change was to get Cage on the court a lot more, which we've done that. We went from 10 up to 28 minutes. And getting Morton on the court, who is going to now take the bulk of the minutes at center. That's our 1-star current, but 3-star potential. A center starting as a 1-star guy, yeah, not good on that part. Not good. I've thought about going small with the lineup and maybe getting, McIntyre a little more of that time, or Lawrence a little more of that time, and maybe we will. Maybe I'll figure that out as time goes on and back those guys off a little bit. But this will help with Morton and the other center, the second McIntyre, helping in their development by getting a lot of minutes this season. But it's going to hurt our results a little bit having one really weak starter. We're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up. Next time out, we kick off our very first season. We'll get into the games. I know that waiting 5 episodes to get into games is maybe a bit much, but it's a long-term journey, and we've had a lot to get through to kind of see where we're at. Now, as time goes on, like you've already seen, where I'm not really showing you much of the recruiting, I'm not showing you that I'm failing in the pitch, 20 times every week over and over and over again. You get the point. But for the schedule, the biggest indicator of what to expect is going to be what conference a team plays in, because the conferences were split up via prestige. So the later in the alphabet you are, the lower the conference, meaning the lower the prestige. Now, within every conference, within every division, you're going to have better teams and you're going to have worse teams. But while the better teams are going to shine, they're going to get promoted year after year. And so they're going to be moving up and the lesser teams are going to move down. So that balance is going to kind of stay. So for us, the biggest indicator of whether a team is going to be tough or not is what conference do they play in. We play in Conference V. That is the 22nd of the 22 divisions, the 22 conferences. So Conference T is just a couple above us. We are at the bottom. Now, an independent means they didn't even make any conference, which means they had literally zero prestige. There was not a single team that had one prestige out of 100. There was a half dozen that had zero prestige, and they're all independents. And then 2 and above made it to Conference V. And then you have, like 6 to 7 were all Conference U or Conference T. So Central Connecticut is somebody who didn't have much prestige, but they definitely had more than us. That's our first opponent. Our second opponent will be Nebraska. They're way up in Conference F. They are going to hammer us. Hamilton is Conference N. They're going to beat us probably pretty badly. It's all non-conference stuff to start the season for us. Central Connecticut, out of those first 3 matchups, definitely appears to be the team that we are having our best shot at beating. But you can see that they are the favorite, 57% to our 43% chance of scoring or of winning. In terms of matchups, you see we do have a matchup at point guard, and all season long I think we are going to see us struggle with Jose McIntyre versus Josh McIntyre, our 2 McIntyres, but the 1-star Jose McIntyre giving the advantage to the opposition. Bench advantage does go to us, though. That gives us a little bit of a shot at least. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this episode and this preseason. Games getting underway next time. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.